This first story happened about 2 years ago when I was 19 and working part-time as a delivery driver for a local pizza place. It was a small, independent shop, which meant we delivered to some of the more rural, dimly lit areas on the outskirts of town. Most nights were quiet, but this particular rainy Thursday night is something I will never forget. It was around 11:45 p.m. The shop was scheduled to close at midnight, and I was already cleaning up the counters, mopping the floors, and hoping I could head home early. I was exhausted from a long week of classes and shifts, but just as I was about to grab my jacket from the break room, the shop phone rang. My manager answered, sighed heavily, and looked over at me with an apologetic expression. He told me someone had just placed a cash-on-delivery order for a large pepperoni pizza and a couple of sides. The total was about $22. The address was deep into the wooded suburbs, about a 15-minute drive from the shop. I really didn't want to take it, but since it was my job and the order came in before midnight, I couldn't refuse. I grabbed the warm pizza box, took the keys to my old sedan, and drove off into the pouring rain. As I got further away from the town center and closer to the destination, the streetlights completely vanished. The GPS led me down a narrow, unpaved gravel road surrounded by dense, towering trees. The rain was drumming violently against my windshield, and the wipers were squeaking loudly, making it incredibly hard to see more than 10 feet ahead. There were no other cars on the road, no streetlights, and absolutely no signs of life. It felt like driving into a black abyss. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the GPS announced that I had arrived. I slowed down and looked to my right. The house was a massive, old, double-story wooden building pushed back into the tree line. There were no lights on inside. Not a single lamp or porch light. The front yard was completely overgrown with wild weeds and thorny bushes, almost swallowing the walkway. It looked entirely abandoned, like a place no one had lived in for decades. I sat in my idling car for a moment, staring at the dark house. A sudden, intense feeling of dread washed over me. A primitive gut instinct telling me to just put the car in reverse and leave. But then I rationalized it. I figured maybe the owners were just sleeping, or perhaps it was a poor family trying to save money on electricity. I didn't want to get written up by my manager for bringing food back without trying. So I grabbed the pizza box, my phone, and stepped out into the freezing, wet night. I walked up the creaky, rotting wooden steps of the porch, the cold rain soaking through my sneakers. I approached the front door, lifted my fist, and knocked firmly. No answer, only the heavy sound of the rain hitting the metal roof above me. I waited for about a minute, shivering from the cold. I knocked again, much louder this time. "Pizza delivery," I called out, my voice sounding incredibly small in the empty night. Still, there was only silence. I was genuinely relieved, thinking I could finally leave. I turned around to walk back to my car when I suddenly heard a faint, distinct scraping sound coming from the dark side of the house. I froze in my tracks. My heart skipped a beat. I slowly turned around and shone my phone's flashlight toward the pitch-black side yard, but I saw nothing except wet leaves, mud, and dense trees shivering in the wind. Just as I turned back toward the front door to take one last look, I noticed something that made my breath catch in my throat. The front door was now slowly, silently creaking open, but there was no one standing there. The hallway inside the house was pitch black, smelling heavily of damp wood, dust, and old mold. The darkness inside seemed absolute. "Hello?" I asked, my voice shaking noticeably now. "I have your pizza. It's $22. From the deep, unseen darkness of the hallway, a voice finally answered. It wasn't a normal voice. It was a raspy, dry, whispery voice of a man, sounding completely unnatural. "I'm upstairs. Just bring it inside and leave it on the dining table. The money is on the kitchen counter." Every single alarm bell in my head started screaming. The hairs on the back of my neck stood straight up. There was no way in hell I was going to walk into a dark, abandoned-looking house in the middle of nowhere for a $20 delivery. "Sir, I'm really sorry, but store policy strictly states that drivers cannot enter a customer's home." I lied, trying desperately to keep my voice steady and professional. "Can you please come down to the door and collect it?" A long, agonizing silence followed. The rain seemed to get louder. Then, the whispery voice replied again, but this time it was significantly closer, as if the person had moved silently through the dark and was now standing right behind the open door. "Just come inside, I'm waiting." And that was the breaking point. I was done. I dropped the hot pizza box right there on the dirty porch floor, turned around and sprinted down the steps toward my car like my life depended on it. As I ripped my car door open and threw myself inside, I looked back at the house through the wet windows. In the dim, yellow beams of my car's headlights, I saw the front door was now wide open. Standing right on the edge of the porch was a tall, incredibly thin man. He was wearing a dirty, oversized yellow raincoat, but what made my stomach completely drop was what he was holding in his right hand. It was a long, heavy, rusted iron crowbar. He wasn't running after me. He wasn't yelling. He was just standing perfectly still under the pouring rain, his head tilted slightly to the side, staring blankly at my car with wide, empty eyes. I jumped into the driver's seat, locked the doors instantly, slammed the gear shifter into reverse, and hit the gas pedal. My tires spun violently in the thick mud. For 3 terrifying seconds, the engine roaring before they finally caught grip on the gravel. I sped down that narrow dirt road backward before spinning around, never looking back once until I hit the main road. When I got back to the shop, my manager took one look at how pale and sweaty I was and knew something was wrong. I was practically hyperventilating as I told him what happened. He immediately called the police. About an hour later, the local police called the shop back with an update. They had sent 2 officers to investigate the address. It turned out the house had been completely abandoned for over 5 years after the previous owner passed away. The phone number used to place the online order belonged to a cheap burner phone with no registered name, which was already turned off. But the most terrifying detail the police shared was what they found inside. They found the empty pizza box on the porch, meaning the man had taken the food. But inside the dark hallway, hidden right behind the front door frame, they found a sleeping bag, a few empty cans of food, and a digital video camera mounted on a small tripod, aimed directly at the front door entry. If I had ignored my gut instinct and stepped just 2 feet into that dark hallway to deliver that pizza, I am completely convinced I would have been blindsided with that crowbar, and I wouldn't be here to tell this story today. Needless to say, I quit that job the very next week, and I never, ever go near dark, isolated houses after the sun goes down. Story took place during my sophomore year of college, back in the winter of 2022. I was working as a late-night delivery driver for a Chinese takeout place in downtown Chicago. Most of my deliveries were to high-rise apartment buildings, which I usually preferred because they felt much safer than isolated dark roads. But one rainy Saturday night completely changed my perspective. It was around 1:15 a.m., just 45 minutes before my shift ended. I was handed a final order, a large bag of noodles, spring rolls, and soups. The delivery address was an old, 15-story apartment building on the rougher side of the city. The customer had paid online, but the receipt had a very specific note left in the comments section. Elevator is broken. Please take the stairs to apartment 7B on the 7th floor. Knock 3 times softly. Do not shout. I wasn't thrilled about climbing 7 flights of stairs after a long shift, but I wanted to get it over with. When I arrived at the building, the lobby was completely empty and poorly lit. The security desk was abandoned. Just as the note said, the elevator doors had a rusted, out-of-order sign taped to them. I sighed, pushed open the heavy metal door to the stairwell, and began my climb. The stairwell was incredibly claustrophobic. The concrete walls echoed the sound of my wet sneakers, and the yellow fluorescent lights flickered violently every few seconds. By the time I reached the 5th floor, I was catching my breath, but that's when I noticed a strange, damp smell in the air, like wet clothes that had been left in a dark room for too long. When I finally pushed open the door to the 7th floor hallway, I was greeted by absolute silence. The carpet was old and stained, and the hallway stretched out like a long, narrow tunnel. I walked down the corridor, looking at the faded brass numbers on the doors, 7A and finally 7B. Remembering the note, I knocked 3 times, softly. No one answered. I waited for about 20 seconds, then knocked 3 times again, slightly harder. "Delivery," I whispered, keeping my voice low, as requested. Inside the apartment, I heard a sudden, sharp thud, followed by the sound of someone frantically shuffling toward the door. The peephole suddenly went dark, letting me know someone was looking out at me. I held up the plastic takeout bag so they could see it. The lock clicked, and the door opened just a few inches, held back by a heavy silver security chain. A woman's face appeared in the crack. She looked to be in her late 20s, but her skin was incredibly pale, and her eyes were wide with pure panic. She was breathing heavily, as if she had just been running. Before I could even say hello, she looked past me, frantically scanning the empty hallway behind me. "Are you alone?" she whispered, her voice trembling violently. "Yes, ma'am, just your food," I said, thrown off by her intense demeanor. She didn't look at the food. Instead, she reached through the crack, grabbed my forearm with a freezing cold hand, and pulled me closer to the door. Her grip was incredibly tight. "Listen to me very carefully," she whispered rapidly, tears welling up in her eyes. "Do not look back. Do not make any sudden movements. But the man who lives in 7B isn't here. I don't know who is inside this apartment with me right now. He broke in through the fire escape 10 minutes ago. He forced me to answer the door so you wouldn't get suspicious and call the cops." My blood turned to pure ice. My heart began to hammer violently in my chest. I froze, my eyes locked onto hers. "He is standing right behind the kitchen wall with a knife," she sobbed quietly, barely making a sound. "He told me if I make a scene, he will kill me. Please, just pretend everything is normal. Walk back to the stairs slowly. The moment you hit the stairwell, run and call the police. Please." Just as she finished saying that, I saw a large, dark shadow move across the wall. Inside the apartment's dimly lit hallway, right behind her, a tall man stepped into view. He was wearing a filthy gray hoodie with the hood pulled tightly around his face. In his right hand, he was holding a massive, serrated hunting knife. He didn't say a word. He just stared at me through the crack in the door, raising a single finger to his lips, signaling me to stay quiet. I have never felt a terror like that in my entire life. My body wanted to scream and run, but I knew if I panicked, he might instantly hurt the woman. I forced myself to swallow the lump in my throat. I looked down at the food bag, trying to make my voice sound as normal as humanly possible. "All right, ma'am, here's your receipt. Have a great night," I said, my voice cracking slightly at the end. I handed the bag through the crack. She took it, her hands shaking. The door slowly closed and the lock clicked back into place. The second that door shut, the reality of the situation hit me. I turned around and began walking down the long hallway toward the stairwell. Every single cell in my body wanted to sprint, but I forced myself to take steady, normal steps, terrified that the man would open the door and chase me down the enclosed corridor. The moment my hand touched the heavy metal handle of the stairwell door, I threw it open and sprinted down the concrete stairs like a madman. I didn't care about the noise anymore. I flew down 3 steps at a time, nearly slipping twice on the damp concrete. I burst through the lobby doors, ran out into the pouring rain, and dove into my car. My hands were shaking so violently, I dropped my phone twice on the floorboard before finally dialing 911. I screamed the address into the phone to the dispatcher. Within 4 minutes, 3 police cruisers screeched to a halt in front of the building, their blue and red lights flashing against the wet pavement. I pointed the officers toward the stairs. I sat in my car for 45 minutes, shivering, watching the building entry. Finally, I saw the officers walk out. They were escorting the young woman who was wrapped in a yellow emergency blanket, sobbing, but physically unharmed. Behind them, 2 officers were leading the man in the gray hoodie out in handcuffs. One of the officers walked over to my car to take my statement. He told me that my ability to stay calm completely saved that woman's life. The man was a highly dangerous escaped convict who had been hiding out in the city's abandoned buildings. He had targeted her apartment completely at random. If I had panicked, shouted, or tried to push the door open, the officer said the man undoubtedly would have used the knife on both of us. I drove back to the restaurant, handed my keys to my manager, and quit on the spot. I never went inside another high-rise apartment building after dark, and to this day, I can never shake the chilling thought of what would have happened if that brave woman hadn't whispered the truth to me through the crack in the door. So, if you enjoyed these stories, please leave a like and consider subscribing to the channel for more horror content. Also, I want to hear from you. Which of these stories terrified you the most? Let me know down in the comments below.